Anytime you're waiting to hear the decision from a five-star player, people really get ratcheted up. They're ready to play. They are ready at any moment to see what's going on. When you start talking about waiting on news of a five-star quarterback that people kind of don't really at all know what's going on, the panic button ratchets up yet another level. That's where Georgia's at right now. They're waiting on word from Jared Curtis, a five-star quarterback who has been committed to them in the past and will make his announcement on Monday night or Monday afternoon, really, between the Dogs and Oregon. And it's an important moment. It's not all end all be all for Oregon. It's not end all be all for the Ducks, but it is an important moment in this recruiting cycle because the quarterback sets so much of where you're at. And I can go through the list of guys. I mean, whether you're talking about Matthew Stafford or Aaron Murray or Zach Mettenberger or, Fatone Balta, whoever you get in your quarterback class matters a lot in terms of setting the bar. Where are you at? Are they going to recruit for you in a major way? And recruiting, of course, has changed significantly in the last 5 years, if not 25 years. But we've got a lot of information about this over at Dog Post. This video is sponsored by our buddies over at Red Zone, Scott and Mindy. You can always check them out over on Clayton Street downtown in Athens. They'll be there no matter what kind of five-star decisions are made from players in the future. That's a five-star local store to go support over at Red Zone over on Clayton Street. Make sure you're checking in on them every time you're in Athens. But I think with Jared Curtis, okay, so if you don't recall everything about this situation, Jared Curtis had Nashville Christian, class of 2026, he committed to Georgia, oh my gosh, a year ago, a long, extended period of time ago, and then he backed away. And, he backed away October 17th, 2024, talking about how he sort of reopened his recruitment and so forth. That was a tough one for Georgia, for sure, in October. I mean, it was just before Georgia and Texas played. So that meant he had been committed for about, I think it was about 6 months, maybe something like that, from March to October. So maybe 7-ish months, something like that. But 6'4", 224 pounds. Here's what Matt DeBerry has to say about him. He's a big mobile gunslinger, 6'4", 225. So he's about my size, except he can really run. Who can beat defenses with both of his arms and his legs. His arm talent is easy to notice. He can test defenses vertically and knows how to throw accurately on the run. As a sophomore, Curtis carved up opposing defenses on a consistent basis. He can win games with his arm, but he's also capable of picking up big yards on the ground. That's the thing that jumps out to me more than anything about him is his ability. His ability to run is not insignificant at all. And Georgia's had really two quarterbacks that they've signed. Justin Fields and Stetson signed, but it was a transfer. So they have really not had a game changer with their legs. This guy can run. Now, I don't know if he's Stetson, but this guy can run. And so that's something to pay attention to here. But the question is, what's going on behind the scenes? We've got an article for you right down below. I'm going to link it. Make sure you're checking it out. Check out Dog Post. You can get a subscription to the site for $1 for the first 30 days. That's an awesome, deal that we don't always throw around. So make sure you're taking advantage of it. A lot of folks have already signed up to read this article, and it's not even been out for 5 hours. So make sure you're checking it out. It's what we're hearing about him, and the truth of the matter is, you're gonna. I think a lot of people are gonna not know what's going on until tomorrow. And here's the other dichotomy here about all of this. It's Sunday night right now when y'all are watching. Well, this is being released, and the fact of the matter is, in the new world we live in recruiting, that you can feel very confident the night before that something's going to happen, and then the next day, you've lost. Georgia, that happened with KJ Bolden with Georgia. I mean, a summer, what was it, more than a summer ago, whenever it was with KJ. That was supposed to be Georgia, and then he committed to Florida State. Of course, we know at the end of the day, he signed with Georgia. When you think about, oh man, the running back that picked Alabama over Georgia, Young. I can't remember his last name, but I went all the way down there to the Panhandle of Florida, and he picked Alabama. But that was supposed to be Georgia the night before, and then the morning of course, everything changed. So in the new world now of NIL, particularly, it is extremely difficult to know exactly what's going on. I think we are giving you in the article that we have below the most recent information as of essentially 24 hours beforehand. Remember, the timeline here is that this guy from Nashville, Tennessee, is playing at a smaller school, but the athleticism is pretty evident and obvious. Okay, he's playing at a smaller school, but he picked Georgia about 14 months ago. Then backed away in October. It really did look like Oregon for a while. And I'm not sure it looks as much about like Oregon as well, I'm sure it doesn't look as much like Oregon as it once did. But the question is, did Georgia, make enough of a push, enough of a run here to get where they had to go? One thing that Matt DeBerry points out about in this article is, he says, if you want an elite quarterback, you have to break the bank. And that's something that we're just seeing everywhere. When you start talking about, just as an example, Carson Beck. Carson pulling in a reported $4 million a year as a an established 2-year starter at a high level SEC school, a national power. The market for him was $4 million. For Nico, it was not even wasn't even $2 million. So these things can all change at the end. And you're talking about, there's only so many schools that really can compete in the marketplace with Georgia. Ohio State, Texas, Michigan, but certainly Oregon, and I'm sure I left people out there, but certainly Oregon with their, Phil Knight money, for lack of a better term. But I don't think that necessarily means any particular thing. Everybody's got to decide what they want to do. The player, the family, the agent, and or the agents. It's up to this is a life altering decision that Jared Curtis is going to make, and you're not going to hear me complain about what he decides to do one way or the other. I think he's got to do what's best for him. We're going to have total and complete coverage of this over on Dog Post on Monday. I'd make sure you're checking in early and often about this. We'll blast it out. This is expected around late afternoon, early evening on Monday. Now, I've been around the game long enough to know that giving times to say when something's going to happen is not always the best way to do it, because inevitably they are delayed. But we've hit the moment here for Georgia with this class, which is a pretty solid class so far, I have to say. But you got to have your quarterback. If you don't have, and if you don't have your quarterback, then that means that there's some work to be done. You have to sign quarterbacks in classes, period. And you saw with Georgia a couple of years ago, as it relates to Dylan Raiola and Ryan Puglisi signing 2 guys, turned out to sign just 1. So this is a class that is slowly getting put together. Yeah, you only got 7 commits, but they're all 5 of the 7 are at least 5-star guys. But Curtis would be a big deal there for Oregon. They're in sort of the same boat with Georgia. They have 7. It's not like SC and Notre Dame and Clemson have jumped out to pretty good recruiting classes. They we'll see if they're there at the end. Ohio State always is. Georgia usually is. Texas, Alabama. Alabama's probably got some work to do too right now. It's really early right now. But this class, for Georgia, I can't hate it. It's spread out a little bit in terms of who the positions, but that's the way that it should be. And but Curtis would certainly be the headliner, but there's a lot left out there for this Georgia program to go get. I don't think there certainly shouldn't be any concern about, Kirby Smart of all people and recruiting. That's not an issue. Jared Curtis is going to make his decision on Monday. Make sure you're staying tuned over at Dog Post for all this information. We'll have everything and more. Thanks for watching.